Time to take a look at the new rules for one of the most brutal engines of Khorne. How does the Chaos Space Marine Super Heavy stack up with its own new datasheet? Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking Chaos Space Marines once more. There have been a whole load of rules leaks out for the Codex, and it does appear that the Lord of Skulls datasheet is amongst them. We talked through all the points costs in the Codex a few days back, and I was kind of interested to see that the Lord of Skulls had gone up quite significantly. Previously it was 450 points, now it's 575. It kind of hinted that it will be getting quite a lot more dangerous, otherwise why raise the points? So let's see what it can do in the new book. First of all, we'll take a look over its datasheet, and then do a little bit of math hammer comparing the old datasheet to the new. So first up, the Khorne Lord of Skulls does remain a Lord of War choice for Chaos Space Marines, and as I mentioned, it went up to 575 points, up a massive 125 on the cheapest previous version. To be honest though, compared with the previous, I would have been quite tempted to upgrade to the Hades Gatling Cannon, usually meaning that one would have been at least 480 points, if not more. So realistically, it's more like around about an 100 points increase. Compared with that one though, all the gear is free on this one. You can freely swap out the Skull Hurler for the Hades Gatling Cannon. They are quite a lot more similar in ability. It kind of has been helped out a bit by those Warzone Nephilim changes as well. The Super Heavy Auxiliary Detachment will be command point free if your Warlord is a Chaos Space Marine, so I guess it is quite nice that it no longer costs you a CP to include anymore. Statline wise, it's seen a few buffs. It remains movement of 10 and hits on 3s. It's strength 8, toughness 8 now, so the strength has dropped a tiny bit. It's 30 wounds and a 2+ save, so quite significantly tougher, and has 6 attack space rather than 4 plus hateful assault. 30 wounds with a 2+ save and armor of contempt is just going to be monstrously hard to shift. It means that you're saving AP-3 anti-tank guns on a 4+, which is great. I'm glad they increased the durability quite significantly. It really does need it if it's going to cost almost 600 points. The +2 attack space is really quite handy as well. And in keeping with the old datasheet, the attacks also degrade upwards as well, so as you take more damage you get +1 attack for each degrading level. So as before, when you're on a lower wounds count, you will be striking with a massive 8 attacks, and please Khorne very well indeed. It still probably is going to be worse when degraded than previous though, as its weapon skill and ballistic skill get worse now, which didn't happen previously. Overall though, in combat it does hit significantly harder than before. Keywords wise, being a big Titanic demon engine, it's got a few interesting ones. It's a Titanic vehicle as expected, has Traitoris Astartes for the standard Chaos Space Marine keyword, can be from any legion so it doesn't just have to be World Eaters or anything. It's got the demon engine keyword for any stratagems or synergy. It's always Khorne, and perhaps most intriguingly, it's got a Warp Locust keyword, which I'm going to guess is going to be something that allows a stratagem. Into the most exciting bit perhaps, and here are the weapon stats. The Great Cleaver of Khorne is basically unchanged, strength times 2, AP-4 and damage 6. It'll only be hitting on strength 16 rather than 20, but still against just about everything in the game that's still going to be wounding on a 2. It's got more attacks than it had previously, so it's going to hit harder than it was. If you budget a command reroll for maybe a failed wound roll or something, then you've got a pretty reasonable chance of offing an Imperial Knight in a single round of combat. Otherwise, you can use its sweep attack, which is strength user, so strength 8, AP-3 and damage 2, and you triple your attacks usually to 18, though it could be as much as 24 when you degrade it. The sweep attacks have got a bonus AP, and damage 2 rather than D3 will be a bit more handy against things like standard Space Marines. For the armed weapons, the Hades Gatling Cannon still is a nice general purpose one. It's got an extra pip of AP now, so we'll be hitting at AP-3. The Skull Hurler used to be just much worse than the Hades Gatling Cannon. It's now far better as a blast weapon with 2d6 shots, strength 10, AP-3 and damage 3. I feel like the two guns are actually fairly well balanced now. The Skull Hurler will be better against hard targets and particularly toughness 8 ones, where the Hades Gatling Cannon will win out a bit against 2 wound infantry. I think with all the damage worn around, I might be a bit more tempted by the Skull Hurler myself. Then we've got the 3 different choices of belly weapons. These kind of trade off range for hitting power. The I-Core Cannon's got d6 plus 3 shots, that's strength 7, AP-3 and damage 2. The Gore Storm Cannon is only 24-inch range, gets 3d3 shots at strength 9, AP-2 and damage 3. And the Demon Gore Cannon is the closest range of all of them, only being 18 inches but hitting very hard, d6 shots at strength 10 AP 4 and damage d3 plus 3. At first glance I must admit they look fairly well balanced to me. I think I'd probably be a bit more tempted by the Gorestorm or Demon Gore ones, but they seem a pretty reasonable trade-off for the range for the damage really. Finally, for special rules, we've got Let the Galaxy Burn for those exploding sixes. This thing is going to quite like the melee version. Wanton Slaughter does seem like it's particularly nice for any bracketed demon engines like this. When you're only hitting on 5s anyway, it basically gives you the equivalent of hitting on 4s in terms of damage. There's also a generic demon engine rule that isn't listed here. We'll have to wait and see for that one, but I strongly suspect it will convert a 5+ invul save, and it might well give you the rule of regenerating a wound per turn as well. Then it gets the Knight rule called Titanic Demon Engine. It means it can fall back and charge, and it can move across non-vehicles or monsters when it moves. Very similar to the Imperial Knights. It makes it a little bit harder to screen this guy from going where it wants, which kind of makes sense. And finally it does have the ability to fire blast weapons in engagement range if it wants to, and it gets +1 to hit in engagement range as well. Certainly doesn't hurt if it wants to remain in melee, but I suppose there's not really much to stop you from falling back, shooting whatever you want, and then just charging back into combat. I think that's usually going to be preferable, as then you'd be fighting first. Overall, it certainly seems big, threatening, and packs a ton of damage both at range and in melee. Still though, almost 600 points is quite a lot of points. I think the amount of support and buffs that you can put on these things might be quite important as to how much they see play. Finally, I thought it could just be interesting to see the damage and durability compared with the old one. If you took the cheapest version at 450 points, then the cost would increase by about 28%. So in general, any buffs above that would usually be a win. Toughness wise, it's gained +2 wounds and a 2+ save with Armour of Contempt, which is going to be particularly nice with las cannons and things, as you'd be saving them on 4s and missile launchers and things on 3s. The previous version of the Lord of Skulls would take around 32 missile hits, 18 las cannon hits, or 17 dark lance hits before it went down. Now it's more like 51 missile hits, 26 las cannons, or 18 dark lances. Basically, point for point, it's got tougher versus missiles and las cannons, but a bit weaker versus things like dark lances with AP -4 or mortal wounds. Perhaps a little bit of a side grade there. Really does depend if the enemy's packing AP -4 or not. If not, then generally it's looking a bit harder to shift. Damage wise, maybe it's a bit more complicated, as I feel like this thing's really going to suffer from losing a whole bunch of synergies that it has. The previous Codex Chaos Marines hadn't been written with the core keyword, and it meant that you had really quite a lot of powerful buffs that you could stack on one of the biggest models in the Codex. Things like full rerolls from Abaddon the Despoiler if you wanted, warp timing up the board to get him into combat very, very quickly, and also that fairly crazy Demon Forge stratagem allowing you to reroll all hits and wounds for 1 CP. A pretty undercosted stratagem to be honest, and certainly helps a massive demon engine like this punch far above its weight. Of course we don't know what sort of support it might be able to get in the new codex. I'd guess a bit less, but it might still have some powerful options. We'll have to wait and see there. It will have lost Death to the False Emperor, but seeing as you're replacing that with those wanton rules, it will also have the option of getting exploding sixes with those ranged weapons too. Just in terms of its base datasheet damage though, if we were going with the smash attacks, then usually against most targets, the old version's going to have +20% more damage, so a bit less than the cost increase. Normally you'd be hitting with Hateful Assault for the +1 attack, so it's a fairly simple 6 attacks rather than 5, arguably a little bit weaker per point, never mind the small strength decrease. The sweep attacks though gained AP and a flat damage of 2, it means that it's actually 90% more dangerous versus standard Space Marines. It's got the extra attack, plus the extra AP is really useful against Armour of Contempt targets. Flat 2 damage will be great against things like standard Space Marines, though it will be a little bit worse against 3 wound infantry. Overall though, the sweep attacks have got a decent win in my opinion. Finally, there's quite a lot of configurations for the range builds, but just taking one comparison versus a Toughness 7 vehicle at 24-inch range. From the new version, the Gorestorm Cannon and Skull Hurler would give you the best result at around 13 wounds, beating out the old version's Hades Gatling Cannon and Ichor Cannon, which would only deal 9 wounds, plus I hadn't even accounted for the Hades Gatling Cannon costing an extra 30 points. That at least is really quite a massive increase, plus 40% compared with previously, and does outweigh the 28% cost increase. With access to Demon Forge though, at least with the old version, it might well swing back the other way. Overall though, it's certainly a big meaty datasheet. Kind of interesting that it's representing really quite a large chunk of the army now. That is actually kind of an interesting list building option for Chaos Space Marines now if you wanted to get a whole load of points out of just one model. The thing does cost £100 from Games Workshop, but getting a third of your army in points value actually makes it one of the better deals in terms of Warhammer pounds per point. I guess if you've got a corn themed Chaos Marine army, maybe not the worst pickup in the world, though currently my instincts are that it might be a bit less competitive in the new codex compared with the old. I just can't help but think with all the buffs that Chaos can put on things between stratagems, psychic powers, and prayers and things, you might be better off with more core units and more competitive armies. Let me know what you think though down in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly be looking forward to reviewing the Chaos rules in full once we have them. Hopefully shouldn't be too far away now. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page, and you can find that down in the video description. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.